The biggest problem in security that remains unsolved is unprotected attack paths that allow threats to compromise vulnerable targets in the cloud and data center. But traditional microsegmentation is too complex and time-consuming. There's a better approach: Edgewise Zero Trust Auto Segmentation. Edgewise is impossibly simple microsegmentation, delivering results immediately with a security outcome that's provable and management that's zero touch. Driven by machine learning, Edgewise automatically builds policies that protect any application in any cloud without any changes to your network. They provide measurable improvement by quantifying attack path risk reduction and verifying software identity before it communicates to stop application compromises and data breaches. To see how to eliminate your network attack surface, visit securityweekly.com/Edgewise. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Qualys is introducing a new prescription for security, and it's free: Global IT Asset Discovery and Inventory. Activate it today at securityweekly.com/Qualys so you can achieve 100% near real-time visibility across your hybrid environments.
Welcome to Security Weekly. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. We are recording live at DEF CON 27. We're at the Social Engineer Village. Joining me for this interview is Perry Carpenter. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're going to talk about you
Yeah.
in your presentation here in a little bit. And what interests me about this story is I have an autistic child.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to talk a little bit about your autism and kind of your path here a little bit. Give us a little kind of precursor into your talk.
Yeah, so as I was saying before we put the headphones on, this talk is terrifying for some reason right now. I was diagnosed later in life, and all throughout my life before then, I kind of knew that I was different. In one piece of writing that I put out recently, I talked about how I kind of identified kind of like an alien or alien anthropologist, kind of looking at the world around me, trying to figure out why people do the things that they do, believe the things that they believe, act the way that they act, and so on. And so over the past few years, it's come to light as I got my diagnosis that, there's a name for that, and it's called Asperger's syndrome, which has recently been reclassified just as autism spectrum disorder.
Right.
And it's answered a lot of questions, but it also opens up a lot of new things that you have to think about. But overall, there have been a number of things over my life that whether intentionally or unintentionally, I've learned how to use social engineering skills and other skills in order to achieve a modicum of success. So now I'm a C-level executive at KnowBe4, and we focus on human behavior. So you can kind of see one of those things that people on the spectrum are well known for is this idea of a restricted interest. So for me, my restricted interest was human behavior, and it linked to security. And early in life, I was into magic and misdirection, and later in life, I got into street hypnosis and pickpocketing and simulated mind reading, and it was it's all pivoting around why people behave the way that they do. So I just talk about how over a period of years, I learned how to put on different masks. I learned how to present really well in front of groups of people, how I immersed myself into the speaking culture to kind of try to break the monotonous tone that I used to have. I mean, back in high school, and regardless of what you think about people on the spectrum not showing emotion clearly, I did feel a little bit of pain when somebody referred to me as Mr. Robot, or somebody said, Perry is an emotional robot. And I look back, and at that period of my life, I can definitely see how I always gave that impression. But later in life, probably when I was 30 or so, I got put in some situations where I was having to lead teams, present very frequently, and so on. And so I went and modeled myself after some of the speakers that I admired.
Right, you kind of pick a role model
Yeah,
or
pick a role model.
or mentor.
And I saw it as picking a mask to put on at the time. Not that I wanted to fake what I was doing, but I wanted to be able to emulate somebody.
Is that because it gave you confidence by mirroring somebody or using
Yeah,
that kind of mask? Did it build your confidence level? Is that why?
I think it did. It dissociated me a little bit, so it's not me that's on the stage doing this thing. I'm not revealing so much of myself, but I'm kind of picking the me that I would want to be on stage and projecting that. And so I learned how to do all the, probably hopefully if you're hearing some voice variants and things like that, all of that got injected at that period of time. Another thing that happened, actually two things collided about the same time that really I think worked out well for me. And I'll touch on one thing that happened before that, because I was working at Walmart at the time in their security department. When you get elevated to a certain position, they want you to go through the Dale Carnegie training course.
Okay. Yep.
And in that, there's a lot of public speaking, whether you like it or not, and a lot of trying to figure things out. And so at the end of that course, I got the award for the most changed in any student that was there. And so that kind of propelled me. It gave me a little bit more confidence. Later on, I was working doing security at a different company, Altel, before they were bought by Verizon. And I ran their security awareness efforts and anything related to an enterprise security initiative, so transformative in nature. And at that time, I was doing a lot of work trying to also just flesh out ideas. So I started to plug into the blogosphere and do some writing, and then ended up being introduced to some folks at Gartner. So Altel acquisition happens by Verizon. I ended up going to Gartner, and now I'm in a position where I'm also not just having to be intelligent, but I'm having to articulate that on the phone every day and speak in front of people. And about that same time, also the pastor at the church that I was attending had an issue and had to step down. And I, in my background, had some theological training as well. And so they were facing the decision of, do we close the church that we're in, or do we find somebody that can sub? And so now I am teaching once a week in front of people. I'm also walking through the wreckage of human life with people and seeing their emotions. And then I'm also doing the Gartner thing. And so every day of every week, I'm having to get in front of people and learn how to express ideas in a way that they understand, learn how to deal with the emotion that's coming from them, and learn how to reflect that out in a way that creates change in whichever environment that I'm in.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand is the spectrum of autism is very broad.
Yeah.
Very wide-ranging. You're on one side of that spectrum. My son is actually on the opposite side of that spectrum. And so a lot of people stereotype autistic people in not having connections with humans, right? And you've worked through that in what you've done through your career, where we're having this conversation, right?
Yeah.
My son never had that problem, actually. My son is very socially adept. He loves people and he loves talking to people. He has, he's more slow when it comes to learning and learning disabilities, but he doesn't have the social things that a lot of people stereotype autistic people with. So he's never had to fight that. In our life, it's more about what's that right skill set and that thing that motivates him when he graduates high school to move forward. You had some different things that you've been fighting through, because you're doing this, right? You're going to get up and talk about your life and your story here in a little bit, and that's kind of nerve-wracking for you.
Yeah.
Hopefully this is helping, by the way.
No, it's helping me kind of straighten out some thoughts verbally, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this briefly also before, that my son is also on the spectrum, and so he's also very, very social and he expresses emotions really well, but he's also the same way I was at his age, very rigid in thinking, very hot and cold when it comes to my opinions on other people, and so it's really interesting to see. It seems like in the literature, and if you talk to therapists, there's something that happens at about age 40, where people that are on the spectrum tend to it's almost like an epiphany moment, but it's not. There's something that happens within their brain, and they naturally are more self-aware and aware of the feelings of others. They have more empathy. They're more coachable in a lot of ways. Realize that there's gradients of, I hate to say right and wrong, but I think you understand what I mean.
I know what you mean.
And so I would say to anybody that does have a kid and you're seeing a lot of those things, that if you trace a lot of the people that are socially aware and they're autistic, there are good things that are in store for them later in life, because being intelligent is one thing. Not having emotional intelligence is a completely different thing.
Right.
And so if your son can have a good conversation with somebody, if he can even get the surface level knowledge to start an entry level career, he's got a good path. I kind of went the other way. I was really good at technical things. And I was the guy that when I was coding back at Walmart would unplug all the lights overhead, and I lived in a cave and would never talk to anybody.
Right.
I'd code for 10 hours and it felt like 5 minutes. And I had to be brought into the social world.
Had to kind of be brought out of that environment into the social environment.
And it was because I was good at coding. It's like everybody gets promoted to their level of incompetence.
Right.
And I had to decide, well, do I want to go back, or do I want to try to move forward and figure out how far I can take some of the little awakenings that I had early on.
Yeah, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
Because again, there's a lack of comfort there, right? You're out of your comfort zone, and that will tend to keep people in the environment that they're in and not come out and try the other things.
And I'll be honest. So going in and giving a security presentation in front of thousands of people is easy for me, because I can disassociate from that. It's not individuals. Talking one-on-one or 1 to 3 or a small group of people, that's excruciating. And I did a lot of both of those at Gartner and in my role now. And I go in and I can become the person that I want to be.
Right.
But at the end of that day or that couple days, if it's a conference, then I just have to unplug and let everything kind of filter back in and try to recharge a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you published a book.
I did.
Transformation Security Awareness. Is this some of your learnings and your life learnings that are in this book?
So one of the things I'm going to talk about is this idea of restricted interests and connected domains within that. And so a lot of the connected domains come in that.
Got it.
And so I talk about how we use this term security awareness, and I think it's a misnomer. And so I draw a few things out of that. Is just because somebody's aware doesn't mean they care. If we try to work against human nature, we'll fail every single time. And what our employees do is way more important than what they know, because knowledge doesn't stop a breach, but action decision does.
Yes.
And so if you could see in that, there's a lot of human behavior aspects. There's also a lot of, I get into design and marketing principles and how we change people's opinions on things. I get into the FOG model of behavior and how everything relates to motivation and ability and prompting. And I get into social constructs and how we can use social pressure. Even right now, I'm hearing myself, I'm so much more comfortable talking about this than the other. But how we can use all of that and how we can create programs that actually drive the behavior that we want, rather than just throwing information at people and hoping for the best.
Right. Oh, that's great. Perry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon. Welcome to Security Weekly. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. We are recording live at DEF CON 27. We're in the Social Engineer Village, and for this interview, we have Chris Pritchard. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So you want to talk social engineering basics?
Sure.
Which is great. And then the tagline was also known as breaking into airports, casinos, and critical infrastructure. Yep. So hopefully we get some interesting stories to share. Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What are some of the basics when it comes to social engineering?
So the whole reason behind the talk was that I was worried that people were thinking to get into social engineering that they needed to know body language, facial expressions.
Right.
And I thought that was a bit of a barrier. And actually, you don't need to know those things to make a start. So the whole talk was about simple, basic things that you can do to make a start in social engineering.
So what are some of those basics?
So some of those basics are going to a property. Let's say that this building was the target. go to that building, have a look around, walk around the perimeter, look for weak spots. And if you're going to try and get in and pretend to be one of the employees, what do the employees look like? Or how do they dress? Do they have ID badges on? What do they look like? Yeah. Copy that, emulate it, because then if you do get in or manage to sort of tailgate in, or you find a smoking shed and sort of follow somebody in through that way, or a back door, when you're actually in the building, you then look like that person or the people who work in there.
Yeah, so you want to blend in
absolutely
with the people.
Yeah.
Confidence has to be in one of those basics too, right? Because there has to be a level of confidence that you are really trying to be an employee or whatever. I mean, there has to be a confidence in the way you carry yourself and your demeanor if you get in.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. But if you don't have that confidence, again, don't use that as a barrier. Use that as a tool and say, okay, so I'm going to be nervous because nerves are natural. So I'm going to be nervous when I get into this, high security place where I'm not supposed to be. How can I make my nerves as part of the story? And go, I know, I can pretend to be a new employee. I've lost my ID badge, or I've lost where the toilets are, where the coffee and tea making facilities are. Use that and go up to someone genuinely nervous and go, I'm really sorry, this is my first day, and I forgot the bit where the toilets are. Can you show me where that is, please, or point it out?
Right.
So use it. Don't let that stop you. Use that as a tool.
Got it. Some of the other basics.
Some of the other basics. Okay, so the crucial ones I think are ID badges. Now, we're wearing DEF CON badges today.
Right. Well, you are. I take mine off for the podcast.
Yeah,
mine's over there. My wife has already social engineered that, by the way, twice in the last 2 days. Well, she didn't have a badge. We were with our daughter yesterday.
Did she get challenged?
She did,
okay,
by one of the goons. And she said,
say?
Look, I'm her mother. She's here. I'm a vendor. We're just going to the booth. I'm not trying to do anything, sly or anything like that. And they're like, okay. And they let her in. She was just confident. She just kind of pushed her way through.
And there's always a good logic behind having a story, a pretext, a logic, a reason why you should be in there. And that's exactly the same with social engineering. Make up a story as to why you should be in there. So one of the things I say is if you're going to think of a story, make that story about things you know about. So I come from an IT network background. My story is often I'm here to fix the internet, because nobody wants the internet not to work. So if you go in there and say, I'm going to fix your internet and make it faster for you, people are like, let me help you.
Yeah, right.
And they'll come your way and want to help you fix that thing.
Right.
So make it about stuff you know.
So badges,
copy them, make them. It doesn't have to be exact,
but get them close.
Close. I mean, I've broken into an airport with a plain white badge, nothing on it. Now, the airport had lots of information and details on the badge, but one of the other crucial things that you had to be observant about is they had little metal pins stuck up and down the badges that said they were first aiders or something along those lines. And I emulated that. I couldn't make a copy of the badge, so I emulated it at the metal badges.
So the lanyard and the other things on the lanyard.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that got me in.
Yeah.
So those are little subtle things that we just need to be observant about when we're trying to get into these places and think about and emulate it as much as possible.
So when you think about breaking into airports, right, badge, what about the casino? How'd you get in there? Was it badge again?
It was badge again. Yeah, it was exactly the same. It was badge again. And what I did is I went into a sort of a lower security area first. And I got challenged by somebody in there. And this particular one, I did lots of casinos, but this particular one was next to something that was a high security facility. And so all of the staff in this particular casino got training by anti-terrorist police. And the guy sort of challenged me and he said, oh, hi, are you lost? And again, use that to your advantage. Yeah, I'm lost. I'm looking for the boardroom or the meeting room. Oh, okay, let me show you. As we were walking down the corridor, we started chatting. And he said, I'm really sorry to have challenged you. I just wanted to make sure you weren't a terrorist or an intruder. And I said, well, that's okay. That's fine. I'm okay with the challenge. I'm not a terrorist. And I wasn't. I was an intruder, but I wasn't a terrorist.
You weren't a terrorist.
Yeah. But what was really great is I used that guy, that contact later, because I saw him in another area and I said, oh, hi, John. I need to get into the security operations center. I hear you're the man to talk to. Oh, hi, Chris. Nice to see you again. Yeah. Let me go and direct you to Bert, and he will help you out. He's the head of physical security. And so because I had that connection,
Right.
I had an
You
introduction.
use that
Exactly.
is to your advantage
Yep.
to get to that next level.
Yep.
Is that how you ultimately ended up getting
Yeah.
in?
So I got a guided tour of their physical security operations center for the entire facility by the head of physical security.
Wow.
And if you are with somebody of that stature, nobody's going to challenge you because
Interesting.
you're with the man who is supposed to be in charge
Yeah,
of all
right,
that
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I worked 7.5 years in nuclear power.
Okay.
And when you used to go into the plant, you went through the man doors, right?
Mm-hmm.
The single trap doors. You went through dropped all your stuff in the X-ray machines, all that other kinds of stuff. So I think it would be very difficult to get into one of those types of facilities.
But did you always go in through the front door?
Yeah, well, yes, of course I always went in through the front door.
And so what we often don't think about is the back door or the way.
Side door or...
Exactly.
Yeah, so a maintenance access or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And this is something else that I point out when you're doing that sort of walk around the perimeter.
Yeah.
Don't look at the front. The front is going to be probably the most secure thing there
Yeah.
because everybody's coming in, everyone's got that channel, they have lots of security guards, they're expecting everyone to go in that way.
Yeah, now
Don't.
that's a great, because one of the things that all the nuclear power plants have is they have a fresh water source.
Yep.
Because they have to bring in the water to cool
plant.
the plant, right? And that goes off to the cooling tower. But that's always on a lake or something like that. So there's always a back door from that because you could come through the fresh water pipes or whatever, kind of come in that back door.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Interesting.
And somewhere as difficult as a nuclear power plant, which had some experience with that. I would set that up a bit more complicated. So I would make some phone calls and make it so that they were expecting me. But I would hardly ever go in through the front door unless I have to.
Unless you had to.
Yeah, back doors are better. They're weaker.
Yes, agreed. Any other tips or tricks that people should think about when they're trying to do these social engineering tests?
So yeah, I would try and talk to people. I would engage. You have to. What we're often worried about is being spotted. And so I would try and think about how can I engage in polite conversation. You don't have to make somebody your best friend, but you are supposed to work there. Think about that mindset. What would you do as an employee when you go into your normal day job?
Right.
You talk to people.
Yeah.
Or you
give them a hug.
Exactly. Well, yeah, maybe not. Unless you're trying to clone the badge. You've got a badge, really.
Yeah, and then we could do that. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think about that mindset. Think about what do I do when I go in my normal 9 to 5. I talk to people if I hear someone talking about holidays, vacations. I would be, oh, did you go there? I've been thinking about going there. And again, you're just building that acceptance that you should be there. If you are talking to people, if you are not talking to people, there's a slight chance that you're going to get spotted because they're going to go, who's that new guy?
Right.
I don't know who he is. But if you talk to people and just polite conversation and interject every now and then, doesn't have to be everything, but yeah, you're going to build acceptance that you're supposed to be there.
What's that normal timeline look like when you're on these activities? Are we talking just a few days where you're doing this, or do they get extended a little longer in some cases?
It varies. It varies on what the client wants, and that's ultimately the challenge. What does the client want us to do?
Yeah.
And often we will have discussions and dialogues about what do you want? What's the target? Is it a red folder in the finance department, or is it you want us to come in, put a Dropbox in and leave, or do you want us to come in, sit in there as long as possible, try and exfiltrate sort of sensitive paperwork, for example? So some are very quick. Our approach is often if the customer has never had any social engineering type tests, we'll try and make that quite short because there's a good chance we'll get in.
The proof point is, can you get in first?
Yeah.
And if you can, in organizations that have never done it before, now they know, okay, so somebody could get in, they start to improve stuff, they start to do awareness training, some other things.
Yeah.
Then they might bring you back in and say, okay, now that we've done that, can you actually put something in the net, in the data center, or pull out some sensitive data or something
Exactly
like
that. Yeah. And then you have a longer engagement, and that time frame is extended because you hope that the social engineering training has worked. Hope.
And you hope everybody forgets who the heck you are from the last time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you wear a disguise. But yeah. So yeah, it really does depend on what the customer's maturity level, I'd say, was like.
That's awesome. Chris, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back soon.